Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Reset Now podcast, where we talk about all things reforms. I'm Shyranthi Dhurairaj, Research Associate in Advocata Institute, and joined with me is Dr. Dilini Hemachandra. Dr. Dilini has obtained her bachelor's degree in agriculture and master's degree in agricultural economics, both from University of Peradeniya, and she went on to do her MA in economics and her PhD in economics from University of Hawaii in the US. And she's currently a lecturer in University of Peradeniya in Faculty of Agriculture. She's a senior lecturer from 2015 to date. Hello, doctor. In Advocata's series of Reset Now podcasts, we've been talking about a lot of reform areas that Sri Lanka needs to do for a better future. And today's topic, we will be focusing on land reforms. Land reforms is a major area to look at. It has several folds into it. As much as we talk about the economic impacts of the land reforms that we need to do, we will be specifically talking about agricultural land reforms as land is a major input for agricultural productivity. As much as comparing Sri Lanka to other international countries, we do have a lot of issues in agricultural land reforms, like not having a cadastral map, not having a proper system for the farmers to register. So, when all of these things are present, one of the major things that we can see is also the government ownership of land. Government owns 82% of land in Sri Lanka, and one of the major areas that I would like to discuss with you, doctor, is how much has government ownership of land has been affecting land system in Sri Lanka at the moment.
Okay, that is my first question. Yeah, thank you, Advocata, for inviting me for this podcast. I have done some work on agricultural land, so I think with that experience, I will talk about the issues related to agricultural land. Now, this 82% of state ownership of land uh, uh, is highly stated in everywhere when we talk about the issues in land in Sri Lanka. As a statement, that is true, yes, 82% is owned by the government. Um, but it doesn't mean that it is the government is using those land.
Yes, true.
Okay, not all 82% is the government uses those land. Uh, some of it is given out to various institutes for their use, including state institutes, cooperatives, as well as private uh, individuals.
Yeah.
And when it comes to agricultural land, one of the important policy decisions that our previous governments had taken was that they have to give out land for landless poor.
Yeah.
Those who are especially in agriculture. So some of this land was alienated to landless poor farmers, uh, but not giving the full ownership.
Yes, that's
Okay,
true.
keeping the ownership with the government.
Yeah.
Some amount of land was given out to the government, and there uh, the major reform happened in 1970s. You might not have been born by then, Shyranthi, including myself. Um, in 1972, there was this Land Reform Act,
Okay.
and which gave way to a major land reform in Sri Lanka, where private ownership of more than 50 acres of land was prohibited. And
Yeah.
if you are a private owner owning more than 50 acres of land, they were taken to the government
Okay.
just
Yeah.
overnight,
Yeah.
right? And so this land is still with the Land Reform Commission. They were redistributed
Yes.
to individuals based on request and based on government policies as they see necessary.
Yes.
So when they keep the land ownership and give out land to individuals, when you don't own something, you
Yes.
don't care as much,
Yes, that's
right?
true. That's true.
And when we look at research,
Hmm.
we look at land productivity of different lands with different characteristics,
Hmm.
right? So we look at how they use inputs, we
Yeah.
look at how they manage the land, and
Yes.
we have seen, and there are published research articles, we have seen that
Hmm.
land which are not owned
Yeah.
have a less productivity than which are owner managed,
Okay.
right? And that is in terms of productivity.
Mm.
And then when the state is owning the land, we are uh, obstructing the performance of a land market,
That's true.
right? When we say government owns land, that means no land market for these lands,
That's true.
right? So, and as economists, we say like the most efficient
Mm.
form of resource allocation is through markets. We
Yes.
should let markets decide
Hmm.
based on demand and supply, and then
Yes.
it will be automatically allocated for the best use. Well, of course, markets are not perfect.
Yes.
There are market inefficiencies, but when it comes to agricultural land in Sri Lanka, since
Mm.
most of it is government owned, land market is high. We don't have a land market for agricultural land,
That's true.
if I put it that way. So, and when you are not, when there is no land markets, there you
Hmm.
are a private investor who want to invest in an agricultural project. How
Yes.
do you get land?
That's true.
Right? That is a big question. Now, that has been affecting the commercialization of
Hmm.
agriculture in Sri Lanka a lot, in my understanding.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's a very true statement. Maybe if we look at this entire issue from the angle of productivity, Doctor, another area that really bugs me is that we see a lot of Sri Lankans who are very proud of how fertile our land is, which the question is, are we even fulfilling that entire like output that the land can give? So, are we utilizing the land is a major question. In your opinion, do you think the agricultural sector in Sri Lanka is able to fully utilize the land that's allocated for them, or are we having any hindrances?
Okay, so we have about, now if you look at how land is classified,
Hmm.
we have about 45% of our land in agriculture.
Yes.
So that is about 2.75 million hectares.
Okay.
So we are talking about a large proportion of
Yeah.
land being as a small island in
Yes.
agriculture. Now, um, even though we have a good climate, we have water, even our dry zone is dry zone for us, but not
Yeah.
in world standards. Even our dry zone is kind of a wet area in world standards.
Yes.
So we have very good conditions for agriculture.
Hmm.
But yet,
Hmm.
yet, if you look at the agricultural land productivity and compare it with other South Asian countries, we have
Yes.
the lowest.
Okay.
Okay, we
That's
have the
very
lowest
sad.
land productivity in agriculture in South Asia. Um, so that said,
Hmm.
so we are not using land efficiently.
True.
So being an island, we are as a resource, land is limited,
Hmm.
and we are not taking the maximum out of this limited resource as well.
That's true.
So two issues:
Hmm.
land is limited, and we are not getting the best out of it, and that is again in there also
Hmm.
two things. We have whether we have allocated the land for the best agricultural use is a question,
Okay.
and uh, in areas where we have allocated land for agricultural use, are we getting the best?
Yes.
Are we efficient enough?
Yes.
As I told you, when we compare with other like South Asian countries, because
Hmm.
they are in the region and the same similar climate, what we see is that we are not as efficient. We can
Yeah.
do way better
Yeah.
given the nice climate um, um, and the conditions we have. We cannot be satisfied.
That's a very sad reality that I think all of us are facing. I mean, given that we were a agricultural focused country, we've moved towards a service based economy right now. I mean, that is bound to happen over time, but also given the resources we have, it's quite shocking that we are not utilizing it
Yeah,
to that
we are
extent.
keeping a big resource kind of stuck in
Yes.
agriculture and not using that in a best way.
Yes.
So we are in a way not doing justice for other sectors as well. We are
Exactly.
not
That's
releasing
true.
it for other purposes, and we are not doing using it properly
Yes.
as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's actually the entire dilemma that we've put ourselves in. But what do you think the reason that even like any farmer is not able to utilize it? Is it only the ownership of the land that is causing them not so interested to increase the productivity? Or do you think other reasons are there for agriculture not utilizing the land properly?
Okay. Well, land ownership is not the only issue.
Yeah.
There are many issues related to land. Um, now, one thing is the size. You know,
Yeah.
agriculture cannot, in this era, cannot perform in a very subsistence way.
Yeah.
Now, these land alienation programs have been focusing on small landless farmers.
Okay.
They are giving, for instance, if you look at these alienation programs, they are giving 1 acre of lowland for paddy and quarter acre of highland for
Yes.
the house and the homestead.
Yeah.
So see how small these land units are.
Yes.
So you are giving out in large numbers, right? Large number of beneficiaries, but each getting a small
Yeah.
parcel of land. And when the land size is small, uh, one of the major limitation is that you can mechanize it.
Yeah.
You can't use machinery,
That's true.
right? Which is very important to increase productivity.
That's true.
So that is another area, like, and with there are restrictions on how you can divide this land.
Okay.
Okay, and so that is legally. But when you have two kids and you have 1 acre of land, right, you are compelled to do justice to your kids, and so they use the land on a shared basis,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So still it is not legally fragmented, but it is fragmented use,
Yes.
right? So over the time, these land parcels have become very, very, very small.
Yeah.
So they are only fit for subsistence use.
Yeah.
You can't apply the advanced technologies that we talk about.
That's true.
So for home consumption, for subsistence needs, that is
Yeah.
fine. But for commercial agriculture, that is not the way to go.
That is true. That is completely understandable. And another area that I've actually known of and which I find quite absurd is that any land that is registered for paddy cultivation that cannot be used for any other plantations. Um, this is something that is not so fair for the farmers at the end of the day because they're given a land to do farming and that they cannot utilize it according to what the market needs. What are your thoughts about that, Doctor?
Um, okay. I may have to do some corrections there.
Yeah.
When it comes to now, rice is our staple food,
Yes.
and it is connected with the rural livelihood a lot.
That's true.
So, and as a country and from a policy perspective, food security is a big concern. So we should produce a lot of paddy,
Yeah.
a lot of rice,
Yeah.
given said that um, we have lot of land in paddy
Okay.
for that purpose.
Yes.
Now this land, paddy is cultivated under three we call um, irrigation schemes. So we have major, minor, and rain-fed.
Okay.
So what you said about land not being paddy land not being able to convert it to other purposes is 100% true for major irrigated areas.
Okay.
Major irrigated areas are areas where you are given irrigation
Okay.
water for both Yala and Maha seasons.
Okay.
Okay. Now we have a reservoir
Yes.
systems, and through canal system you get water to the paddy land. And in minor irrigation system, minor irrigation system is where you get water from local tanks.
Okay.
Right, these small tanks have low water holding capacity, so
Yes.
it is, and they are in mainly dry zone. You will only get water during Maha season,
Okay.
right? And there's a third system, rain fed, which is totally, if you get rains, you cultivate, and if not, no irrigation. So if you are in minor and rain-fed areas, for the Yala season, there's an exception.
Oh, okay.
You can cultivate another crop, but it has to be an annual.
Okay.
Now, Shyranthi, an annual is a seasonal,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
It is only for one season. So, meaning that they're short-term crops.
Yeah.
So, that is because in the next season, you should cultivate paddy. So, if it
Okay.
is a longer duration crop, you can't
You
do
can't.
that now.
Yes.
So yeah, so minor and rain-fed areas, there's an exception for to cultivate another crop, given that it is an annual.
Yeah.
But for major irrigated areas, if you have paddy land, you have to cultivate paddy.
Okay.
So we have surveyed farmers, and we have seen that there is a need or a liking if given the
Yes.
chance to grow something else,
Yes.
right? And something that we have throughout failed in our policies is that we have not considered the productivity aspect in allocating lands.
That's true.
So rather than make it a mandatory that if it is a paddy land, you should cultivate only paddy, there should be some clauses
Okay.
mentioning, look at the productivity of this land as well,
Yes.
right? So now in our country we have different agroclimatic zones. Not all zones are ideal for paddy cultivation,
That's true.
right? And if you look at the dry zone and the wet zone, there's a substantial difference in paddy productivity,
Yes.
right? Meaning dry zone paddy productivity is way higher than wet zone paddy productivity.
Yeah.
And wet zone has so many, compared to dry zone, many other demands for our land.
Yeah.
Being more urbanized areas are in the wet zone. So there are competing needs for this land. Yet, if you are, if it is a paddy land, you have to
Yes.
cultivate paddy. So where the productivity is concerned or considered, right? For me, ideally, you should you should have a mechanism to look at the productivity of these lands and
Yes.
then make a decision.
Yes, that's true. That's
And
fair.
allocate lands for a better productive use rather than legally restricting it just for paddy.
That's a very true statement, I would say. I mean, they should have their freedom to do the farming that is highly productive for them, for their land and their equipments and everything that they have in hand.
Shyranthi, yes, as a country, as policymakers, you should have a vision. Okay, for national food security, we should produce rice,
Yes.
right? So given that there should be a better allocation.
Yes.
So if you say, okay, there might be, if you really analyze productivities, suppose we come to a situation where, okay, there are other land users than paddy, so we should all convert the paddy land for other. It is not like that.
Yes.
It
Okay.
is not like that. Given that we have food security also as a priority, productivity should also be looked at.
That is a very true statement. I would totally agree with you. But looking at all the reforms that needs to be done in land management, when you, for example, like the grant system, or like the lease system that goes on for the farmers, it has been quite a headache for them, especially when it comes to the land management with the agricultural lands. What are the reforms that you think that these processors need to have?
Okay. Now, I think it is related to land ownership as well, right?
Yeah.
When you talk about land grants and permits.
Yes.
There are various government programs from all the successive governments that alienate land to landless in terms of grants, and we have different names for them like Swarna Bhumi, Jaya Bhumi, Jaya Bhumi, like different programs that alienate land to landless. And first, they give a permit, and after about 5 years, you can apply for a grant.
Okay.
And in a grant, you can use the land,
Okay.
but you're not the owner. But you can transfer the land.
Okay.
You can transfer land to your future generations. And if you're selling the land, it has to be for agricultural purpose.
Yes.
And you can't just sell also. You have to get permission from the provincial institutes as well as and then it goes to the land commissioner's department. So you have to get permission
Okay.
for selling. And so that's what I told, land market is not free.
Yes.
It's regulated in that way. So what kind of reforms that we need? Now, why the state keeping the land under their ownership? There's another side to it.
Yeah.
Okay. Partly coming from fear.
Okay.
Partly coming from fear that if we give the full ownership to these people, there would be land grabbing from like this rich, wealthy people.
Yeah.
Because these people are poor, they will be compelled to sell their land whenever they are pressed for money.
Yes.
Right? And we will again have a landless poor class.
Yeah.
So that is one line of thinking. So therefore, we should not give full ownership to these people so that they can, they have the freedom to sell land as they want. The flip side, as I told you, is that refrain land from being allocated to their best use.
That's true.
For the best user and best use as well. I would suggest there should be some control, not just blanketly stopping it from happening. Maybe we can look at it case by case, right? You own a land and you have kids who are not totally interested in agriculture, but you have to transfer it to them. You can't sell it. But your children would have loved if you can sell the land and give them money.
Yes.
But you can't do that.
Yeah.
Right? So maybe you can, as a government, you can monitor if land consolidation by a big private investor is happening, whether land grabbing is happening. And also the government can impose a minimum on a land flow, the size flow on how it can be subdivided or fragmented. And until that, you should be able to decide what you want
Yeah.
to do with the land.
Yes.
Um, and the land, um, if you are a private investor
Yeah.
uh, who have some capital and who would like to invest in agriculture in a big way,
Mm.
acquiring land is a big issue in this country,
That's true.
both for the locals as well as for foreigners. It's a different story. It's very discouraging, but that
Yeah.
is where the capital is coming
Yeah.
from. So as a country which is constricted with foreign exchange, where we want investors to come and invest, we have land policies which are totally uh, uh, unfavorable
Yeah.
for
That's true.
investors. So if you want land, you can apply for a, or a lease
Mm-hmm.
from uh, the government.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, you can apply for a lease at the Land Reform Commission,
Okay.
and you can go up to, I think, 30 acres of land, and
Okay.
you can go up to 20 years of lease.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how okay, so doesn't sound like a bad system, right? But for that you should know where the land is,
That is true.
right?
Yes.
If you know that there's a land available here idling and it is owned by the government,
Mm.
and if you go and talk to the authorities and say there's this land, I would like to uh, like lease it.
Yes.
But otherwise, if you go to these places and ask, I'm interested in investing in agricultural land, can you give me a land of 50 acres suitable for this purpose? There's no registry available
Okay.
information as such.
Okay.
So, information I see is a very important thing.
Mm.
People should know where the land is available, the extents, areas, and so on. Then only you can make decisions.
That's true.
It is amazing how these institutes
Hmm.
are lacking a proper system, a data management system, where
Yes.
when they alienate land, how many lands are being alienated and what is remaining,
Mm.
and in which areas.
Mm.
Such information is not available to the public.
Okay.
And another reason is there are so many institutes working on land.
Yes.
They have
That is true.
their acts and policies governing them, and they have their own mandates.
Mm.
And some mandates are actually uh, like overlapping
Okay.
with these different institutes.
Yes.
So, if you want to work on land, you have to go to so many departments,
Yes.
get approval from this department and that department. So, the process is very cumbersome,
Yes.
and it is very discouraging. Why do you want to take all the trouble and invest here when another country is, very welcoming and
Yes.
very facilitating? Not only for foreign investors, even locals, we have seen local
Yeah.
private companies,
Mm.
they are thinking of going to Bangladesh and India for
Yes.
investing in agriculture, or any other like African countries, because of these issues in obtaining land in Sri Lanka.
Yes. Yes.
So these areas have to be reformed.
Yes.
Right? The mandate, the areas of different institutes working on land has to be very clearly defined,
Mm.
and the processes
Yes.
have to be spelled out. Now, the Land Development Ordinance, which is the umbrella ordinance which governs most of our land, is quite silent on the process that should be adopted
Okay.
in giving out land, or in the process that one should adopt in leasing out land to private parties.
Yes.
So that gives authority uh, to these officials.
Yes. Yes.
That gives a lot of authority and discretion to these authorities to act on their own,
Yes.
right? And so it leads to a lot of inefficiencies and red tape and all that,
Yes.
which is not healthy
Yeah.
for commercial agriculture in this country.
Yes, that I think you covered a lot of reforms in what we need to do and improve. As we've spoken a lot of things for the land reform, especially agricultural land reforms, Doctor, if I may ask, like, if someone um, needs you to spell out, like, okay, these are the reforms, these are the final remarks and like final reforms that agricultural land needs and that could improve us for future.
Okay, first I will start with paddy,
Okay.
uh, because that is the main interest of our people, and
Yeah.
it is the largest consumer of agricultural land in this
Mm.
country. Um, so, without having a blanket uh, policy that
Mm.
if it is agricultural land, it should be only used for agriculture, consider productivity
Mm.
of this land as well,
Yes.
and then decide on whether these lands should be on agriculture or better allocated for something else.
Yes.
That is one.
Yes.
And the second, in terms of land ownership,
Mm.
um, give the ownership to these people
Mm-hmm.
with a restriction on the um, on land subdivision, imposing
Yes.
a minimum
Mm.
of land size,
Yeah.
right? So that it will not be subdivided
Mm.
after some point.
Yes.
And so that is in terms of ownership.
Yeah.
And then land titles.
Yes.
Something I forgot to mention before. Now, we operate mainly on a deed system.
Yes.
A deed is only telling us that a land transaction has happened,
Mm.
right? From
Yeah.
me to you.
Yeah.
But it doesn't say who owns the land,
Yes.
right? So this
Yes.
deed system has given rise to a lot of issues.
Yes.
Some people can make fake
Mm.
do fraud and make fake documents and
Mm.
show that the transaction has taken place, which can be addressed using a title registration system. And this
Yes.
has been understood and taken initial steps way back,
Mm.
because in fact the Land Registration Act came
Mm.
about in 1998.
Yeah.
And then um, using with the help of World Bank,
Mm.
the BIM survey program came into being,
Mm.
a large scale national title registration program
Mm.
starting from 2007.
Yes.
So I think by 2017 we should have completed the
Yeah.
project, but still only about little over maybe 500,000 of land parcels are given titles
Yeah.
of all 12 million private land parcels,
Okay.
right? From 12 million, only 500,000 land titles have been given.
Mm.
Um, so there are a lot of inefficiencies in the system,
Mm.
right? Uh, Survey department, land commissioners department, land registration authority,
Mm.
all have to get together in giving a title,
Yes.
right? So if there's a hitch in the process of service department, the entire thing gets delayed,
Yes.
right? So there should be one institute,
Yes.
one process taking care of land title registration.
That's true.
And um, it comes from increasing manpower
Mm.
to a better data management system
Mm.
and a better process,
Yes.
right? So those things have to be addressed in our land reforms. And so I talked about paddy land, and I talked about ownership, and um,
Titles and
yeah,
registrations.
titles and registrations. And for all this,
Mm.
for all this to happen, I think a better data management system is a
Mm.
must.
Yes.
Information is the key to everything, right? How can you make decisions without the true information,
Yes.
right? So when I studied these areas, what I felt was there's a fear again
Yes.
of revealing information. Maybe it is coming from we being a small island. We don't like, we always have this fear somebody will grab our country, somebody
Yes.
will invade us. Maybe those sentiments are coming from our historical, like our experiences. But those things have to be changed.
Yes.
We can't be insular. Because now world is a different place.
Yes.
We can't just look at ourselves and be in this silo. We have to be more open to change,
That's true.
right? And covering data, not disclosing data is not the way to go.
That is true.
All these government institutes should have an integrated data management system. If land is being used or given out by Land Reform Commission, all other records in other institutes should be updated
Yes.
automatically.
That's true.
Right? So one institute is collecting their own data and it is not talking to another institute. And they have their own set of data. So we can't work as a country with a national interest when they work in their own departments without talking to each other.
That's true.
So those things have to be changed.
Yes. Thank you, Doctor. I think we've covered in the aspect of agricultural land reforms. We went in depth, at the same time covered a major area even surrounding it. And I think we've touched on major things that the government needs to reform for the future. And to follow us for more content on the reforms that Sri Lanka needs to do, please follow our page Reset Now Podcast and follow our other episodes that has been already posted and that is going to be posted for future. We'll see you in the next episode, and this is Reset Now Podcast from Advocata Institute. Thank you.
You can listen to this podcast on Anchor, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. If you enjoyed this episode, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And remember to follow us on all our social media platforms for more exciting content. See you in the next episode.